Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna talks about the ego. He says, as foolish people, out of attachment to ego, act in hope of rewards, so should the wise also act with dispassion and non-attachment, glad to be of service to others. Never should the wise condemn the ignorant for the ego motivation they manifest. Instead, they should seek only to inspire others to perform right action. Offer to me your every deed, devoid of egotism and desire, inwardly centered in the soul, ever calm and free from worries. Be dutifully engaged in the battle of life. Christ expressed the same thought in different words. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Poor in spirit here means without ego, without selfish desires, but utterly receptive to God's will. As did also the Christian saint, St. John of the Cross, when he said, in order to arrive at being everything, desire to be nothing. In order to arrive at the knowledge of everything, desire to know nothing. The ego is both our friend and foe. The yogis say that for the soul to evolve, it must develop the ego before it can transcend it. We need to have some life experience before we can have the desire to change, to improve ourselves. The ego is also an enemy. It can keep us bound to suffering and identification with the very limited little self. And we can't change or try to transform the ego itself. And we can't make ourselves completely different than we are right now. And hold on to our ego, that is. Before joining Ananda Village, I lived for several months in a different ashram. And while I was there, I had the thought, I used to think, now if only I meditated more, if only I perfected the asanas, if I learned more mantras, somehow I could be a completely different person. I could be like the swamis who would visit there, be calm and clear and share words of wisdom. And I imagined that technique alone could somehow mechanically change me. I didn't realize that spiritual growth came also from introspection, also from practicing these teachings in daily life, from changing my attitudes. Yogananda ji defined ego as the soul identified with the body. And we might think, well, I'm not really attached to the body. It's not like I'm thinking all day about pleasures and pains of the body. But how much do we identify with the mind with my thoughts, my perceptions of the way that I think things should be. The comforting attachment to habit, to tradition, to outward stability, to confidence in the future. These are all our perceptions, our mental perceptions. And we really want this kind of comfort, don't we? Guruji's disciple, Sister Gyanamata, wrote how she saw every familiar comfort taken away from her so that she could learn non-attachment. And she was elderly when she was with Yogananda Ji, but when visitors would come and stay at the hermitage, she would leave her bedroom and she would set up a cot in the pantry and sleep there. And at first she resented this fact. And then she realized she was growing by doing this, and she accepted this completely. The world is moving from an age of matter consciousness, of rigid form, of fixed dogma, into one more fluid, of energy, of instant communication. And long range, that means a higher consciousness, generally, worldwide. But that transition takes a matter of centuries. It doesn't come right away. And short range, it can be a bumpy ride. The old ways are resisting the new ways. And we can see that all around us. And with the current uncertainty with the pandemic, I see people who had been consistently calm and kind, now sometimes reacting with anger, with fear, or with judgment against others. And maybe we can see some new anxiety or tension within ourselves. These reactions are perfectly natural. We should stop judging ourselves for having them, and in this way we stop judging others for having them. Swami Kriyananda was a friend to everyone. He never judged any of us for the youthful mistakes that we would make every day. As his secretary, I would type all of the letters that he dictated. And I was always amazed with the complete focus and attention that he gave every letter that came to him, no matter how busy he was with other things, and how he responded with compassion and understanding and help to everyone who wrote. And even a straightforward business letter, he wouldn't write, "Dear Sir," or "To whom it may concern." He would write, "Dear friend." And in closing a letter, if someone was even vaguely spiritually oriented, he would close the letter as his guru did, "In divine friendship." Or if it was a guru bhai to a guru bhai, it would always be "In Master's love." And when he said he would pray for someone, he took that as a very solemn promise. He would have me make a list of everyone who asked him for prayers or blessings, and I would keep that list in his meditation room, and he would pray consciously for each person in his meditation. And his spiritual friendship was unconditional, regardless of how he was treated. Several people spoke against him for decades, and he treated them as friends. To him, they were always his spiritual friends. Whether or not they responded with that love, he said, I love everybody. I love the God in everybody. And if we look at our own lives and we see all the mistakes that we've made, so who are we to judge ourselves? And who are we to judge others? We need to love and forgive ourselves and to forgive others. And we want to also take this opportunity that we have now to introspect more, to meditate on our future directions, to offer to God our questions, our problems, our attachments, and to renounce the ego, to reaffirm our oneness with infinite spirit, and realize how much God loves and protects us. As Sri Krishna told us, and all of our gurus have made the promise that my devotee is always safe. He is always protected. Thank you.
Good morning. Ego, friend or foe, is our topic this morning. And I would say that if you are watching this satsang now or in the future, that your ego so far has been your friend. It has brought you onto the spiritual path. It has made you somewhat of an independent thinker, has given you the freedom to perhaps make different choices than your friends or other members of your family, and to say, you know, I want to check out this path that is serious about meditation, follows these self-realized masters. I've read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I see so much promise and hope in the vibration of that book. And not everybody has that kind of independent thinking in this world. I believe it's taken incarnations and incarnations of already being on a spiritual path and of very, very, very good karma to have made the decision to embrace a very serious spiritual path, such as the path of self-realization. And so the ego to this point has been a very, very good friend. And perhaps when you started meditating, things started going very well for you. Like your relationships got better, suddenly guidance was coming, you were making better decisions, suddenly there was just more light in your life, and everything, you know, a lot of times for the new devotee becomes very, very bright and sunny and wonderful. And that carries on for some time. And we have, you know, we sort of think of Divine Mother as really laying out the path before us, holding a carrot, saying, follow me, with these wonderful new experiences we're having. And then sometimes at a point on the spiritual path, we realize that all that light and all that, those wise decisions and the goodness that we've been feeling flowing through us and sharing our goodness and with others is, we start to think, maybe that light is coming from myself. And we start to think we have become so wise, and we have become so peaceful, and we have become so compassionate. And then that is that little bit of ego that is still flowing through us. And instead of attributing that light, that goodness, that divine love and friendship to the source of all that is, to God, to Divine Mother, we attribute it to ourselves. And then what happens? We just block that flowing through us. Perhaps at that point we may find that we have differing political opinions than others, or different opinions on how to handle the safety of the virus, and suddenly we're starting to feel a little uptight and not as happy as we did earlier. And that's because somehow we've forgotten to continue to look at that source of light that was always flowing through us. Yogananda ji would use the illustration of pots of water at night, sitting outside in the full moon, reflecting in those pots of water. So all those individual pots of water had the reflection of light of the moon in them. But that's sort of like us. We were always reflecting that light that was coming to us, but we were just reflections. And if you break those pots of water and suddenly the moon is no longer shining in those pots of water, where did that light go? What happened to those pots? The light is still there. We must keep our focus on that light, on that eternal source of oneness, of love, of power, of light that is flowing through us. And I'm going to read this poem by Yogananda ji, and it's from Whispers from Eternity, and it's the prayer demand for removing the cork of ignorance. No more shall my consciousness remain bottled in this little vessel of flesh, corked with ignorance. No more will I remain moving through the sea of cosmic consciousness, night and day, years, decades, and how many incarnations, so close, yet never able to contact your sea. Through the bursting vibration of cosmic sound and the surging of your holy name, I have removed the cork of ignorance, which so long separated me from you, though we lived together so closely. Now my body consciousness will meet your all-surrounding, all-pervading consciousness. No longer will I walk heedlessly in you, but never knowing and feeling you. Your image within me shall meet your image everywhere. By releasing the I-ness in me, I will know that I am you, and that you alone are the little egos of us all. That beautiful image that Yogananda ji gives us of, this bottle just floating on the infinite sea, but corked and always separated. And just floating on top of the sea, but separated. And you take out the cork, and now it can merge with the sea. It's like the wave of the sea. We don't want to be focused on the little wave, on our little individual egos. We want to merge back with the ocean of spirit, because that's where our true destiny is, and that's where we will end all suffering for ourselves and for others. And yet, the ego within us may still be stubborn and say, I actually don't want to merge back into the sea. I'm enjoying being a wave. I'm enjoying rising and falling with Maya. I'm enjoying tossing about on the surface of the sea. I'm not ready to merge yet. I like me and mine. And it's like a little child. The ego's like a little child, but I don't want to grow up, Mommy. I don't want to grow up. You can think of Peter Pan, who didn't want to grow up. But we, as connected to a wiser source than that, knows that as long as we don't want to grow up, we will suffer. Because every time we have an argument with somebody about our political opinion or about what to do about COVID, we will hurt inside. Our heart will hurt. Every time that something happens to our sense of security, to our children, to our bank account, We have an emotional reaction. We will suffer inside. So as long as we continue to identify with our egos and our separate self, we will continue to suffer. So we can encourage that little ego to become more mature, help it to grow. You know, we can go back to that wonderful intuition that we had when we came on the path and said, this is for me. Merging in God, becoming one with the infinite, losing all sense of self, becoming enlightened like the great masters is for me. That is what I want. And so we attune ourselves to their infinite consciousness, and we open ourselves to receive their guidance, their vibration, their inspiration, and we nurture the soul. So it's not so much as ignoring or battering the ego, but we nourish the soul. And we begin to perceive higher realities for ourselves, and just holding out that goal in front of us. Yogananda also used the image of the gas burner. And you know, the gas coming up through the flames. And if we have just a little bit of gas coming through and we're closing off that source and we aren't able to receive the inspiration, the guidance, the vibration, the wisdom, the love of God, of Divine Mother, if we close ourselves off with our separateness, with our pride, with our judgment of others, with our judgment of ourselves, if we close ourselves off, we can only ever be just a little flame of light, just very, very dim. But if we turn up the gas, if we open ourselves, open our hearts and our minds to receive all that they are showering upon us, all the wisdom and light and joy and love, and open ourselves to receive that, we can become a great flame of light. We can become an ever more perfect reflection of that divine source of light flowing through us. And we need that light for our own selves so we don't suffer, but also so that we can help others who will come to us. Swami Kriyananda said that the definition of maturity is that we can relate to the realities of others, not just to our own reality. And so we want to become mature. We want to think that you are just as important as me. And actually, everyone is just as important as me. All creatures are as important as me. I am one with all that is. And Buddha, think about the life of Buddha. He lived a life of privilege in a palace, was a prince, and went out and saw suffering in the world. And then he went, we were at Bodh Gaya last year on pilgrimage, he went to that Bodhi tree and sat underneath it and said, I will not move until I understand the source of suffering and how to remove that source of suffering. And he battled with Mara until he emerged victorious and said, now I can go help everyone with their suffering. That is an enlightened being who wants to become one with the infinite so they can help others. Jesus Christ said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in prison and you came to me. And his followers said, when did we do that? I don't remember doing that. He said, when you did it to the least of them, of my brothers and sisters, you have done it to me. And Master said, Yoganandaji said in his poem, God's Boatman, I will come back 1 trillion times if need be, if one stray brother is left behind. These great ones, they have merged their consciousness with the infinite, and they feel for us, and their light, it becomes our light. Their joy is our joy. They only want to come and help us. The great ones come back again and again just to help uplift us and show us what to do to become like them. So let's attune ourselves to their power, to their vibration, and become like them. You probably know that in 2 weekends, we're having a big event online. It's called Change, Transformation Awaits. And I hope you all know about it. And if not, we'll show the website at the end of this satsang. But this is also each of our opportunities to share what we have learned. If we have felt any inner peace from meditation, from Yogananda's teachings, from Autobiography of a Yogi, from Babaji, if they have helped us at all in our lives to become a source of light, a source of peace, not only for ourselves but for others, let's also continue to share that. Think of others. Think how we may be able to help their suffering by just having them attend a weekend with discourses by Nayaswamis, Jyotish and Devi and Dhyana and Jaya and Devarshi and the monks, Brahmachari Jamal, Aditya and others. So many others just sharing of themselves. There'll be guided meditations, there'll be chanting, there'll be information about Ananda all over India and online programs. It's a great source of information that you can really help somebody with. So if you can, just share that information and maybe you can change somebody's life. Jesus said in the Bible that the greatest prayer was love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And to love your neighbor as yourself. And Master said, love your neighbor as yourself because he is yourself. That is how we get rid of the ego. We share our light with others. We think of our neighbors as ourself and don't hold ourselves separate. Let's follow the way that the gurus have showed us. They are walking with us. They will guide us. They know where they're going. And let's attune ourselves to them. Give up our little sense of self and merge with their infinite vibration and consciousness. Joy to you.